Hey, you guys. So, for your first assignment, we're going to be focusing on lake ice out timing as an example of a local climatic event. So, I went to look up the definition for this, and it turns out when you put it into Google, you get a lot of different things. But for our purposes, what we're going to be focusing on is the definition that the Maine Bureau of Parks and Lands uses, which you can see here at the top of the screen. And it basically says it's the time when you can navigate from one end of a lake to another unimpeded. So there might still be ice in coves or around the edge of the lake, but ice out is when you can go from one spot to another. And for most lakes, people are looking along this from one location to the same locations from year to year. Um, the big things that impact the timing of ice out seem to be air temperature and how much snow falls that year. And let me show you a little bit about the historic records, and maybe that'll help make some sense of this. So, people have actually been tracking ice out dates, the dates that the ice leaves the lake, um, at locations all over New England, in some places for over 100 years. And this is just a real quick plot that I threw together for three locations in Maine. Damariscotta is out near the coast, and Moosehead in green is, away from the coast and a little bit higher elevation. So you can see for these three locations, the actual dots are the actual dates of ice out. And what this is showing is that the lower you are on the graph, the earlier ice out is. So this is day of the year, so day 90 or day 110 or day 130. So the higher you go up on the graph, the later in the year ice out is. So for Damariscotta close to the coast, there's a lot of variability, but it's almost always earlier than it is at Moosehead in the green dots. And for both of these, I've plotted this kind of smoothed regression curve through these that shows you sort of the overall trend through time. And what you can see for all three of these locations in Maine is that since 1900, so over the last just over 100 years, ice out has gotten earlier at all three locations. And most people are attributing that earlier ice out as a really solid indicator of warmer temperatures. In fact, you can see this, it's not just these three, it's most other lakes around the region. So this has pretty big implications for recreation, how long people can be out on the ice safely for ice fishing and snowmobiling. Um, Historically, people actually used to use frozen lakes in the winter to travel from one place to another. They were basically a shortcut, so they used to have some real transport utility. Um, Ice timing and how long ice is on the lake is actually also really important for fish. So the longer the ice is on, the more oxygen gets used up in the lake. So sometimes very, very long ice periods can actually harm fish. The reverse might also be true, where if the ice goes out a lot earlier, then the lake starts to warm up, and then it might become too warm for some fish species. So ice timing actually controls a lot about the distribution of fish. The other thing that you guys are familiar with, because we've been talking about it, is what's actually happening on the lake as the ice starts to go out. And I took this picture at Flagstaff a couple of years ago, and you can see there are a bunch of different colors of ice, and there's open water here. And you guys can imagine that that lake water temperature is going to, once it starts to get exposed to the sun, it's going to heat up. Um, and it's going to start to melt the ice more. Maybe there's some snow melt coming out onto the surface of the ice, or it's rained, and that's going to change the surface of the ice, which is of course going to change the albedo, which is going to, you can see there's some real dark ice in here, and that in turn is going to change the lake temperature, and that makes all of this, of course, an amplifying feedback. So what are we doing? So for your first assignment this week, we're going to have a contest. And there are two parts to this contest, but basically I'm going to have people submit their predictions for the date that the ice is going to go out at 4 lakes in Maine. And whoever gets it closest, even if it's more than one person, I will try and send you guys a gift certificate to Giffords or somewhere else. We're going to make it work. So how are you supposed to do this? Are you just going to randomly pick a day, or can you actually do a little bit better? I think you can do better. So I'm going to give you a bunch of information, and this includes the locations of the ponds or the lakes that you can see here. You're going to get some snow depth information. So this is 2016, where it's white, there wasn't any snow, and up into the gray, there's a bit more snow. Here's 2019, there's a lot more snow. So once it gets into the yellows and reds, that means thicker snow, or deeper snow, I should say. So you're going to get, you've got the lake locations, you've got snow depth. I'm going to give you, this is just a snapshot, I'm going to give you the full list of recent ice out dates for these locations. And I'm also giving you air temperatures for January, February, March, and April. And I'm going to give you average air temperature for the month and max air temperature for the month. So what you have to do is use these data to predict when you think the ice has gone out. And I'm going to have you do a training set. If you go back and look, you can see that I've grayed out some boxes on the training set. You're going to, in part one, you're going to submit your predictions for those years to me, and I'll tell you what the actual date was, and then you can figure out how to get closer. And then in part two, you're going to submit your predictions for this year. Those are both going to be up online as Google Forms with date options and the drop-down options. So you should be able to submit stuff on there. And I will try and answer some questions about that. Okay, thanks.